flag executive order, which was one of the 4 that Trump announced today, it criminalizes the burning and, well, really the desecration of American flags in certain circumstances, which surprised me because Trump is a free speech enthusiast, and banning the desecration of flags is a kind of expression. The desecration of flags is a kind of expression in many cases. But let me read it to you, because it's actually, the headline goes a lot further than the substance, but it's quite clever. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can find it pretty quickly on the White House website. Our great American flag is the most sacred and cherished symbol of the United States of America and of American freedom, identity, and strength. Over nearly 2.5 centuries, many thousands of American patriots have fought, bled, and died to keep the stars and stripes waving proudly. And he goes on at some length about how important and beautiful the flag is, and it's very poetic. But then he remembers, well, this is one of the things that makes America so great is freedom. So he says, notwithstanding the Supreme Court's rulings on First Amendment protections, the court has never held that American flag desecration conducted in a manner that is likely to incite imminent lawless action, or that is an action amounting to fighting words, is constitutionally protected. Very interesting. So the U.S. Supreme Court has gone very far in protecting the desecration of flags when it's to send a message. But Trump here is saying, well, what if it is to spark violence, which is a very narrow exception to free speech, isn't it? It's going to have very limited application. Let me continue reading. The Attorney General shall prioritize the enforcement to the fullest extent possible of our nation's criminal and civil laws against acts of American flag desecration that violate applicable content-neutral laws while causing harm unrelated to expression consistent with the First Amendment. This may include, but is not limited to, violent crimes, hate crimes, illegal discrimination against American citizens, or other violations of American civil rights, and crimes against property and the peace, as well as conspiracies and attempts to violate, and aiding and abetting others to violate such laws. So it really is focused on where the flag, it's not the content of the flag and the desecration of the flag that's the point, but it's other things like discrimination and violence. So it's exceedingly narrow, the application here, because otherwise this would be struck down by the Supreme Court, by both Democrat and Republican judges. I'm not going to read, it's a very lengthy and very interesting executive order. They hand off some of the prosecutions to local authorities. They say that the feds, the Department of Justice, may have some test cases to, quote, clarify the scope of the First Amendment exceptions in this area. So basically the first chunk of this executive order is saying we love the flag, we super love it, we love it more than anyone else. We're going to ban desecrating the flags where it's constitutionally permissible, which is probably going to be, and this would be so rare, I think, where desecrating the flag was done in concert with a violent act or with discrimination against Americans. I don't know if that would even happen once a year in the United States. I don't know. I don't follow flag burnings. But really this executive order, the first chunk of it admits the First Amendment protects any substantive content, any expressive content. But look at this. Look at this part. This next part is what this executive order is really about, in my opinion. Let me quote it verbatim. Oh boy, this is good. The Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of Homeland Security, acting within their respective authorities, shall deny, prohibit, terminate, or revoke visas, residence permits, naturalization proceedings, and other immigration benefits, or seek removal from the United States pursuant to federal law, whenever there has been an appropriate determination that foreign nationals have engaged in American flag desecration activity under circumstances that permit the exercise of such remedies pursuant to federal law. This is not about Americans having their free speech stripped from them. Really, this executive order repeats the First Amendment's protections several times. This is about foreigners burning the U.S. flag. This is about sending them home. And really, who could disagree with that? The left? Really? The left are the people who prosecute you if you scuff your feet on a pride-colored rainbow flag sidewalk. If you don't bow down to the trans flag, you're prosecuted for that all over America. I guess we're in the flag wars now. You know, one of the most incredible deployments of a flag was not the American flag, but a Mexican flag. When Donald Trump announced he was going to go ahead with the mass deportation of illegals, there were actual street riots in Los Angeles, and the flag of choice by these people in America was not the American flag, but Mexican flags at anti-deportation riots, which sort of proves the point. You're flying a Mexican flag in America because you don't want to go home to Mexico, but your flag of choice is a Mexican flag. Now, Soros activists quickly saw how that was backfiring in terms of PR, and they tried to get anti-ICE, that's the immigration police, anti-ICE protesters to wave U.S. flags to sort of make Americans think that they love America. It didn't really work. You cannot get a leftist who hates America to fly an American flag, even as a psyop. Now, I see flags all the time in Canada, and also when I travel to the UK and to Ireland. Canadian flags are flown, but by whom? By citizens, by conservatives, by Christians, by freedom fighters, by the truckers. In fact, the flag was sort of adopted by the truckers. I had never seen so many flags and so much anthem singing in my life as when I visited the trucker convoy in Ottawa. But I also see a lot of protests without Canadian flags. I see pro-Hamas protests every week in my neighborhood, and they're only carrying Palestinian flags, Hamas flags, Taliban flags. Sometimes they have trans flags flown by anarchists and by thugs. I've really never seen them fly the Canadian flag. A couple years ago, I went to Oxford University just to tour the place, and I only saw a single UK flag. That's the Union Jack or the Union flag, only one on the whole university. But every other building did have a flag, but it was either the older pride flag, the rainbow flag, or the new trans flag. I must have seen a dozen of those on campus. I felt like I was in a parallel universe. In Ireland, I'm often with the nationalists who only fly the tricolor. That's the three-colored Irish flag, and it's sort of glorious to see 1,000 of them. There are always counter-protesters. They have very few, if any, of the tricolor, but they have lots of Palestinian flags, trans flags, and government labor union flags. It is so telling. I love the flag wars because you really sum up what you stand for in your flag. In the UK, the flag called the Union flag, or sometimes the Union Jack, if you look at it carefully, I'm sure Brits know this off by heart, but Canadians might not know. It's actually flags put on top of each other. There's the English Cross of St. George's, the Scottish flag, and there's the four constituent countries of the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. You can fly your country's flag, the Welsh flag, for example, or you can fly the Union flag, which was also the flag of the empire. But people would often get in trouble for flying not only their national flag, especially the English flag, which is the red cross on the white background, that's the Cross of St. George. You would get in trouble for flying an English flag. It would be called racist. I visited a man in the city of Sunderland in the UK who said police came around and told him to take down the Union flag, the Union Jack, the British flag. It was considered hostile by foreigners. People objected. Police would enforce taking down the British flag. But something amazing is going on right now. The flag is becoming a rallying point in the UK by British people who are against mass illegal immigration. And all across the UK, sometimes as many as 20 different protests in a day. Outside these hotels that have been set aside for foreign migrant men, women, and children are protesting. And what is their symbol? The British flag, the English flag, or the Union flag. And it's incredible. And something amazing has happened. They're being set up all across the country. People are in the dead of night taking up their ladders, climbing up lampposts, and affixing flags, either the Union flag, the Union Jack, or the English flag. And I've seen a Scottish flag also all over the place. And you know those roundabouts, that sort of a circular intersection? They're painting the center circle of that in the English colors of a red cross on a white background. I don't know if you remember a few months ago, I showed you this phenomenon in the UK called blade runners, where people would very quickly go down and use a steel cutting saw to knock down spy cameras that were enforcing those 15-minute cities. Those people called themselves blade runners, and they would run out with a saw, and in often less than 30 seconds, they would knock down these CCTV systems, sometimes for the 10th time in the same location. It's the same spirit of sort of sneaking around in the dark, but instead of cutting down these spy cameras, they're putting up British and English flags, and it's breaking out everywhere. And it's sort of amazing. And the thing is, some city councils run by leftist, UK-hating politicians are vowing to take down the British and English flags. But these are the folks who have abided, or in some cases even put up, Palestinian flags in the UK. I think these are very interesting days, and I love watching these flag vigilantes in the UK. You know, we believe in symbols. They sum up who we are. I don't know if you've followed, there's a US chain called Cracker Barrel. We don't have it in Canada, unfortunately. It's sort of Southern style, home country cooking, comfort food, and it's sort of an old-fashioned vibe, fireplaces, sort of almost a garage sale kind of junk store at the front. It's a very fun, very friendly. Well, they hired a new DEI CEO, and her first move was to absolutely denude the Cracker Barrel logo, to take out the picture of the old white guy sitting near a barrel. It's called Cracker Barrel. And yet they took out the guy, the cracker and the barrel. I'm kidding, that's not what the word cracker meant. To purge any whiteness or southernness. And the customer base of Cracker Barrel has revolted. Cracker Barrel has lost 15% of its stock market value just from changing their logo to deracinate it, to take away its cultural history. Now, I actually had some Cracker Barrel a couple of weeks ago when I visited the States for a day. It's still delicious food. So I think the company's going to survive just because the food's so good. But I tell you, these companies that try and destroy their meaning, like Bud Light or Jaguar, it's not because people really care about Jaguars or Bud Lights. It's because those companies have tried to embody values that we have as people. And then when those companies decide they hate those values, isn't that another way of saying they hate the people? If you liked Bud Light, and suddenly you're under attack and you're not good enough for the brand. If you like Cracker Barrel, but suddenly Cracker Barrel doesn't like you, doesn't want you, wants you written on the picture, it's sort of humiliating. You say, well, if they hate me, why should I give them any of my money? It's very interesting. These are not pocketbook issues. They're identity issues. Of course, people care about pocketbook issues. Of course, taxes weigh heavily on us, and we want to be able to afford things, afford housing and groceries. But who we are counts too. And I think the government, especially here in Canada, has forgotten that. That's why people love football, both US style football and in the UK they call soccer football, because sometimes that's the only way for old stock Americans, Canadians, Brits to fly their flag. It's why both British and US football have been targeted with political correctness, along with our Canadian hockey, don't you think? You know, these symbols matter. These symbols matter because it's about who we are and who we think we are and what we think is important. But actually, people take them at face value. I don't know what you think about these land back acknowledgments that so many institutions have. Before giving a speech, they say we are on the territory of this Indian band or that Indian band. Does that have meaning? Of course it does. Symbols have meanings, words have meanings, flags have meanings. And if you doubt me, look at the recent BC court ruling giving the land back. My point is, you can only fly a flag for so long that's not your flag, that you don't believe in, before people say, well, no, you've been saluting that false flag for long enough that actually is you. What I'm so excited about in both the United States and the UK are, from Donald Trump down to the ordinary Brit, they're reclaiming their flags and their meanings, and with it, their history and their culture.